When most people think of Gene Kelly, the first thing that will undoubtedly come to mind is his classic musical Singing in the Rain, and more specifically the iconic scene where Kelly sings the titular number. But other than that, most people usually just think of him as Hollywood's other great dancer besides Fred Astaire, but for some reason usually isn't given the same reverence that Astaire does, often being thought of more as, quote, that guy who did Singing in the Rain and a couple of other musicals. And the thing is, Gene Kelly was actually an absolute genius. His contributions to the art of choreography and film are so extensive and versatile that most of the techniques he came up with are still commonly used today in movie musicals. And that's only just scratching the surface of how great this man actually was. Now, there may be minor spoilers ahead for a couple of his movies, but I'll generally be trying to avoid giving away important plot details. But nonetheless, if there's a movie of his that you don't want ruined, you might just want to be on the lookout. This will be the only spoiler warning I'll be giving you. Okay. So to make my point as clear as possible, let me just start off by saying Gene Kelly didn't have to take the route he did with his career. He could have easily decided to just become a typical serious actor, and if he had, today he would probably be hailed as one of the best actors of the golden age of Hollywood. And if you want proof of that, look no further than his performance in the 1960 version of Inherit the Wind. Now, I do have quite a few issues with that movie, but Kelly's performance in it is not one of them. Playing a borderline nihilistic journalist that is so cynical, he calls a man who literally died from despair a fool and shows absolutely no sympathy for him, Kelly never for even a second makes it feel as if he's really acting, to the point that he very much succeeds in making the audience want to absolutely despise him. Seriously, this character is a really far cry from the likes of Don Lockwood, perfectly demonstrating just how extensive his range as an actor and how convincing he could really be. And as I said before, he could have applied those really impressive acting chops to become possibly one of the best actors of his day. But he didn't want to do that. And do you know why? Because his real passion was choreography, the art of the dance on film. Kelly even said he made it his life's goal to revolutionize choreography in movies, and he achieved that goal at least 7 times over. Throughout his career, he danced with a broom, a newspaper, on roller skates, with the animated Jerry Mouse, and even with himself. And that's not even considering all of the fellow actors and actresses he pushed to their absolute limits, bringing out some of the best dances they ever performed in the process. Frank Sinatra was even quoted as saying that he gave a lot of credit to Kelly in teaching him how to be a passable dancer, as well as all of the technical aspects to it, all that complicated stuff you don't see before the cameras start rolling. That was probably even harder to figure out than the dances itself. The staging, the lighting, figuring out how to fit everything within the range of the camera, and various other things. He put himself through all that work, pushed himself and many others to their limits, all so he could get dances on screen that had never been done, seen, or even thought possible before. And at the time, this didn't go unnoticed by his peers. Regardless of how they were otherwise, his movies were often highly praised by critics for their dance numbers and advances in technique, both as far as the technical aspects go and how the dancers performed them. And this all culminated in what he believed to be his masterpiece, An American in Paris, an ode to music, theater, and most of all, the art of dancing. Kelly pulled out all the stops on this one. Directed by Vincente Minnelli, but choreographed by Kelly, this movie was filled to the brim with musical numbers and especially innovative dances, culminating in a finale that is nothing but a 25-minute ballet expressing the inner workings and frustrations of Kelly's character. And this movie proved to be so innovative that it made $7 million in 1950, I'd like to remind you, and was almost universally hailed by critics as a masterpiece in dancing on film. And as a result, this movie not only walked away with the Academy Award for Best Picture, but Kelly was also presented with a special honorary Academy Award for his achievements in choreography. And he didn't stop there either. The next year, directing what most people believe to be his greatest work, Singing in the Rain, which Kelly actually co-directed in addition to doing all the choreography. And even if you look before that, you can already start to see his genius with dancing coming through in movies like On the Town, perhaps most famous for the song New York, New York, but has plenty of other great musical numbers to offer, both sung and danced by some of the greatest singers and dancers of the day. Late in his career, he even directed the 1968 version of Hello, Dolly, which, while not too remembered today or regarded, nonetheless gave WALL-E the final touch it needed to be its own masterpiece. And had he been alive to see that, I think Kelly would have been very proud. So what's my point with all of this? That more people than you'd think are quick to write off Gene Kelly as just that guy who played happy-go-lucky men in a bunch of musicals. But in reality, he was so much more than that. To put it simply, this man was an outright innovator. Because sure, impressive dance choreography and dances existed well before his time, looking at you, Fred and Ginger, but he made it so much more than it was. He changed it, revolutionized it, optimized it, and improved it specifically in regards to how it could be filmed to such a degree that his contributions to it simply cannot be overstated. As I said before, he was a very talented actor in addition to his talent as a dancer and choreographer, but instead of pursuing that, he chose to bring some of the best dances ever put on screen to life because he appreciated dance and choreography as a true art form. And if that isn't something you can admire the man for, or even find it downright inspiring, then I don't know what can. Now, of course, there have been many to point out that he wasn't exactly gentle in how he accomplished all of this, often being described as something of a tyrant on set, and numerous accounts of his driving his fellow dancers to exhaustion or even injury. But the thing was that, just like everything else he did, was all in service of getting those dances on film. He didn't do all of that out of sadistic or malicious intent, only for the sake of his movies and dances. Now sure, maybe he shouldn't have taken things as far as he did, but that only once again shows just how passionate he was for the art of dance on film. And not to mention, he has also been quoted as saying that he regretted his behavior and even apologized to some of those people later in life. So obviously he was a big enough man to admit that maybe he shouldn't have prioritized the perfect dance over his fellow actors' health. After all, the man may have been a genius, but he wasn't perfect. He was only human, and like everybody else, did things he later came to regret. Alright, so to put it simply, Gene Kelly was much more than he's sometimes given credit for. He was an extremely versatile and talented actor, one of the best dancers of his day, and one of the best choreographers in film history. And his achievements in that last part in particular should not be overlooked. Because as I said before, many of the technical techniques used to film dance scenes that people take for granted today were first thought up, designed, and employed by Gene Kelly. And what's just as important to remember here is he did all of this simply because he was that passionate about it. As I already argued, his career might have been better off in the long run if he had chosen to focus more on acting exclusively, but instead chose the path he did because he cared that much for it. He wanted to revolutionize choreography and show people the kind of dances that could be put on screen. And honestly, you've got to admire him for that. Sure, he sometimes took those passions and goals a little too far, but that still doesn't change the fact that he went to Hollywood with a set goal in mind and had the passion and genius to go out and actually pull it off. And once again, he does deserve proper credit for that. But at the same time, he does still live on as one of the greatest dancers to have ever graced Hollywood, and will probably live on in the hearts of many for a very long time because of Singing in the Rain. So while it is a unique and understated legacy, at least Kelly is still remembered and given some credit by the public, if not as much as he arguably deserves. Okay, I think I've made my point quite clear. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you believe that Gene Kelly should get more recognition for his contributions to cinema, and specifically choreography, than he's usually given? Or do you believe he has the reputation he deserves? Please feel free to let me know in the comments. And like always, you don't have to agree with any opinions stated in this video. You are free to feel any way you want to about this or any other topic that is discussed here. And thank you all for watching. It is really appreciated. And I hope to see you all next time.